Amara! You've hidden long enough! Show us your face!
A sudden, sharp tearing sound followed by a collective gasp. The sound of electrical buzzing and the beginning of screams. The students collapsed at the sight of her face. Her beauty had never been a blessing. It was a burden. From the moment Amara entered this world, the heavens themselves seemed to hesitate. The night she was born, the midwife's lamp flickered 3 times before going out completely, and everyone in the small clay house froze in silence. Her mother's cries softened to a whisper as her father bent closer, trembling, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The baby's skin glowed faintly, her face shimmering as though kissed by sunlight trapped beneath her skin. It wasn't the kind of beauty people celebrated. It was the kind that frightened you. Those who looked too long said their hearts raced until they couldn't breathe. The midwife, old Mama Ngozi, stumbled backward and clutched her chest, whispering that no child should shine brighter than the lamp that brought her into the world. That night, rain poured without clouds, thunder rumbled without lightning, and the villagers swore they saw strange lights moving across the sky. A child of light born under darkness, they murmured. This one carries a mystery the world is not ready for. Amara's parents, shaken but full of love, did what terrified parents often do. They hid what they could not explain. From her first birthday, her mother wrapped a thin black cloth around the baby's head before taking her outside. As the years passed, the veil grew longer, darker, thicker, until it became part of her very identity. Behind it, Amara learned to watch the world without being seen. She would sit by the small window every evening, listening to the laughter of other children chasing tires down the dusty road, her tiny fingers tracing shapes on the glass. Her mother told her stories to fill the loneliness, stories about angels punished for being too beautiful, and spirits that disguise themselves to live among men. Her father prayed every night, asking God to protect his daughter and soften the hearts of those who feared her. But fear, once born, grows faster than love. By the time Amara turned 10, villagers would cross to the other side of the path when she passed. Children whispered that if you stared at her eyes long enough, you'd forget your own name. And though her parents loved her, she learned early that love could not silence rumors. As she grew older, her beauty only deepened, the kind that made the sun pause on her skin. But beauty had never been her blessing. It was her burden. She learned to lower her voice, walk softly, and hide behind silence. When other girls her age were discovering mirrors, Amara was learning to avoid them. Mirrors reflected too much truth, and truth, in her case, could hurt. Her mother often sat her down in the evenings, brushing her hair beneath the veil, whispering, "My child, the world fears what it cannot understand. Your light is not evil, it is just too much for small hearts." Those words became her lullaby, her shield, her curse. Sometimes, she would stand by the riverbank and stare at her faint reflection trembling on the water's surface, wondering if she would ever live without hiding. She had books instead of friends, and the wind for company. Even the birds that perched near her window seemed cautious. They sang softly, as if afraid to startle the quiet magic around her. Years drifted by like dust in harmattan wind, and soon Amara's brilliance could no longer be hidden. She was a genius, solving equations at 12 that left grown men confused. Her teachers, though wary, could not deny her mind was extraordinary. So when the letter came from the University of Lagos offering her admission, her parents froze between pride and dread. Her mother wept as she folded the black veil neatly, pressing it into Amara's hands. "Promise me," she said, voice trembling, "no one must see your face. Not yet." Amara nodded, though her heart ached with questions she could never ask. She looked at the veil, her oldest companion, her prison, her protection, and for a moment, it seemed to hum with quiet power. As she packed her books and stepped out into the world for the first time alone, the morning sun flared against the fabric, turning it into liquid gold. The neighbors watched from behind their curtains, whispering as they always had. "That girl again," one said softly. "She walks like the sun owes her light." But Amara didn't turn back. The black veil trailed behind her like a shadow that had finally learned to walk beside the light. By the time Amara arrived at the university gates, she had mastered the art of silence. She walked through crowds without being noticed, moved through noise without making a sound. Her long black veil fluttered in the morning breeze as she dragged her small box toward the hostel, ignoring the curious eyes that followed her. Within minutes, whispers began to spread like wildfire. Some students paused mid-conversation. Others laughed behind their hands. "Who wears a veil to school in this heat?" one girl whispered. Another replied, "Maybe she's hiding something. Maybe she's married to a ghost." By the end of her first day, everyone on campus knew her name, or rather, the nickname they gave her, the Ghost Girl. Amara heard it in every hallway, every class, every time she walked into the cafeteria. Some said she had scars. Others said she was a witch. Nobody said she was human. But through it all, she kept her head down, her steps steady, her focus unbroken. She had promised her mother and herself that she would finish school no matter what they said. Her brilliance made her impossible to ignore. Within weeks, her professors were impressed. Her essays were always the best, her answers always precise. But intelligence, especially in silence, made people uncomfortable. To some, she was a mystery worth respecting. To others, she was a challenge worth breaking. That was when Tonia noticed her. Tonia was everything Amara was not: loud, confident, always surrounded by people who laughed a little too hard at her jokes. She was the kind of girl who turned hallways into runways and expected everyone to move out of her way. When she first saw Amara during a lecture, she smirked and whispered to her friends, "So this is the ghost everyone keeps talking about." The girls giggled. "She probably hides a monster face under that thing." From that day, Tonia made Amara her new obsession. She started small, a whisper here, a cruel joke there, but soon it grew into something darker. She would bump into Amara intentionally in the hallway and say, "Oh, sorry, didn't see you under there." Her friends would burst into laughter. Sometimes, she would call across the class, "Hey, ghost girl, are you sure you're not allergic to light?" And though the room often went quiet afterward, no one ever stood up for Amara. They just watched, curious and entertained. But Amara never reacted. She walked past the laughter as if it didn't exist. Every morning, she sat in the front row, answered questions calmly, and left before anyone could talk to her. There was something about her calm that made people uneasy, as if the more Tonia tried to break her, the stronger she became. One afternoon, during a literature seminar, the professor asked each student to describe what beauty meant to them. When it was Amara's turn, the room went silent. She stood slowly, her veil catching the light. "Beauty," she said softly, "is not what people see. It's what they survive." For a moment, even Tonia said nothing. But the silence didn't last. The next day, Tonia posted a photo of a black cloth on her social media with the caption, "Cover your face, not your shame." Hundreds of students laughed in the comments. Amara saw it, but said nothing. That night, while everyone slept, she sat by her window, staring at the dark campus lights. For the first time, a tear rolled down her cheek, not from sadness, but from exhaustion. Why do people hate what they don't understand? She whispered to herself. The wind didn't answer, but it seemed to hum softly around her, as if even nature was trying to comfort her. The next morning brought something different. During lunch at the cafeteria, a boy sat across from her. He wasn't laughing like the others or whispering behind his phone. He simply smiled and said, "Hi, I'm Daniel." Amara froze, spoon in hand. "You're sitting in my spot," she said quietly. "Then I guess I'll share it," he replied. His voice was calm, kind, without judgment. For the first time in a long while, someone looked at her without curiosity, just warmth. He didn't ask why she wore the veil, didn't stare, didn't pry. They ate in silence, the kind that wasn't awkward but peaceful. When she left, she expected him to laugh with the others, but he didn't. The next day, he sat beside her again. And the next. Soon, people began to notice. Ghost Girl has a boyfriend. Tonia shouted across the cafeteria one afternoon, and everyone laughed. Daniel didn't flinch. "Maybe if you had manners, someone would sit with you too," he said calmly, and the laughter stopped. That single moment shifted something on campus. Some students began to see Amara differently, not as a ghost, but as a girl who refused to be broken. Yet Tonia's smile only grew tighter, her pride burning quietly into jealousy. She wasn't used to being ignored, and she certainly wasn't used to losing. And so, as Amara's calm strength began to draw quiet respect, Tonia began to plot something that would turn admiration into fear again. The friendship between Amara and Daniel bloomed quietly, like a flower that refused to ask for attention. They studied together in the library where dust motes danced in the afternoon sun. When others left the room whispering, Daniel stayed, asking about her favorite authors and listening when she spoke about her dreams. For the first time, Amara laughed without fear. People noticed the change, the way she lifted her head a little higher, the way her steps grew lighter. But every smile she allowed herself drew new whispers from the corner of the hallway. "So the ghost girl can smile," someone murmured. "Maybe the boy is under a spell." Daniel didn't care. "Let them talk," he would say. "I see you." Those words carried her through long nights when she wanted to disappear. They were soft words, but in a world that had made her feel invisible, they sounded louder than any cheer. Tonia, however, couldn't stand the sight of them together. Every time she saw Amara and Daniel walking side by side, something burned in her chest, mix of jealousy and confusion. She told herself that it wasn't about Daniel, that it was about pride. She had built her identity on being the most noticed girl on campus, and now a quiet girl in a black veil was taking that spotlight without even trying. Her laughter became sharper, her jokes more cruel. One afternoon, she slammed her tray beside her friends in the cafeteria and said, "I'm done watching her act like she's better than everyone. You'll see who she really is." Her friends laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but Tonia's smile never reached her eyes. Over the next few days, she gathered stories, half-truths, old rumors, anything that could feed the tension. She wanted the entire school to see that the veil wasn't mystery. It was madness. And in her anger, she began to plan something she would later wish she could undo. The opportunity came during the department's cultural night event. The auditorium was crowded, music filling the air, phones raised to capture every performance. Amara sat near the back with Daniel, content just to watch. She wore her veil as always, the fabric catching the colored lights from the stage. When Tonia's group finished their dance performance, she didn't leave the stage. Instead, she grabbed the microphone, her voice echoing through the hall. "Before we end tonight," she announced with a forced laugh, "let's clear a mystery that has haunted our campus. Who is the ghost girl really?" The crowd murmured in confusion. Daniel frowned. "Tonia, stop," he said from his seat, but she pretended not to hear. "Come on, Amara," she continued, pointing toward the back row. "You've hidden long enough. Show us your face. Or are you afraid?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, uneasy but curious. Amara stood slowly, her hands trembling beneath the fabric. "Please don't do this," she said softly. But Tonia was already walking down the steps, determination in every stride. "If you have nothing to hide, prove it." In one swift motion, she reached forward and yanked the veil away. For a heartbeat, the hall went completely still. The colored lights dimmed, and then flickered, as though the electricity itself had lost breath. A hush fell, so heavy that the air seemed to press against every chest. Then came the screams. One by one, students collapsed where they stood, clutching their hearts or covering their eyes. The sound of falling chairs echoed like thunder. Daniel felt the world tilt around him, but something inside him refused to give in. He saw Amara's face, radiant, unearthly, beautiful in a way no words could hold. Instead of fear, he felt peace. As the chaos erupted around them, he stepped forward, took off his jacket, and gently covered her again. "It's okay," he whispered, even as his hands shook. "You're not cursed. You're just different, and I'm not afraid." The lights steadied. The air grew still. Amara fell to her knees, tears slipping down her cheeks beneath the cloth. Around them lay a room of fainted students, the echo of Tonia's scream fading into silence. In that moment, something ancient shifted. The curse that had lived in Amara's blood for generations felt the first crack of release. But neither of them knew it yet. All they knew was that for the first time, someone had seen her and survived. Silence lingered long after the screams had faded. The hall felt different now, like the air had thickened with something ancient and unseen. Daniel sat on the floor, still holding the black veil in trembling hands, while Amara knelt beside him, breathing hard under the fabric. Around them, students were waking slowly, confused and frightened but alive. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared move closer. Tonia sat against the wall, eyes wide with shock, her voice trapped somewhere between guilt and disbelief. For the first time, Amara's secret wasn't a rumor. It was truth, heavy and undeniable. She wanted to disappear, to run far away from every staring face, but Daniel's hand found hers and held it tight. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe." His voice carried calm into a space filled with fear. And in that calm, something stirred deep inside her, an echo, like a heartbeat older than her own. It wasn't anger, and it wasn't pain. It was memory. That night, as Amara sat alone in her hostel room, the air began to hum softly again. She saw flashes not with her eyes, but within her spirit. Faces she didn't recognize but somehow knew. Women draped in veils of silver and black. Villages lit by moonlight. Voices whispering prayers over newborns whose beauty was too bright to bear. She realized they were her ancestors, the women who had carried the same burden through generations. Each had lived hidden, misunderstood, punished for something they never asked for. And through every vision, one phrase echoed again and again. "Only a heart unshaken by fear will break what we could not." Amara pressed her palms to her chest, trembling as she understood. The curse was never about beauty. It was about fear, the fear of being seen, the fear of being different, the fear that love could never survive truth. She looked up at the dark ceiling and whispered, "Then let it end with me." At that same hour, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the moment in his mind, the flicker of light, the way everyone had collapsed, the look in Amara's eyes before he covered her again. He felt a strange warmth in his chest, as if a quiet light had settled there. Something about her had awakened him too. He left his room and walked across the quiet campus until he reached her window. Through the curtain, he could see her silhouette kneeling, head bowed. "Amara," he called softly. She turned startled, then opened the door before she could think twice. The corridor was empty and still, lit only by the pale glow of the moon. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "People already think you're— I don't care what they think." Daniel interrupted gently. "You don't have to hide anymore." His words were simple, but they struck something deep. Tears filled her eyes again, and for the first time, she didn't look away. The veil slipped from her fingers and fell quietly to the floor. A soft wind moved through the hallway, gentle, almost musical. It carried warmth, not fear. In that moment, the darkness she had carried for years began to dissolve, like smoke fading into morning light. Across the campus, as dawn approached, the air itself seemed to sigh. The heaviness that had clung to her family line for generations lifted, replaced by something pure and quiet. In her heart, Amara heard the final echo of that ancient voice, "You are free." She looked at Daniel, this boy who had seen her completely and hadn't run. Gratitude flooded her chest like sunlight. For the first time in her life, she felt light, not the dangerous kind that frightened people, but the kind that heals. She smiled, a small, trembling smile that grew stronger by the second. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "Don't thank me. You did this." Behind them, the first rays of morning touched the horizon. Birds began to sing. The veil that had been her shield now lay still on the ground, glimmering faintly in the light, no longer heavy with sorrow but bright with peace. The curse had not been broken by magic. It had been undone by acceptance, by love unafraid to see the truth. When morning came, the campus felt strangely quiet. News of the strange night had traveled faster than wind. Some students swore they had dreamt it. Others whispered that a miracle had happened in the hall. For Amara, the dawn felt lighter than any she had known. She stood by her window, the first sunlight spilling across her face. For years she had feared this light, hiding behind layers of cloth, but now it felt like home. She reached for the black veil lying neatly folded on her table. It no longer looked like something to hide behind. It looked like a story finished, a burden finally laid down. She draped it gently over her shoulder and stepped outside. Every sound felt new, the rustle of leaves, the chirping birds, even the footsteps of students hurrying to class. When she walked through the courtyard, conversation stopped mid-sentence. People turned, staring in disbelief. The ghost girl had returned unveiled. But this time, there was no fear in their eyes, only wonder. She moved through them slowly, calmly, until she reached the open lawn where a crowd had gathered. Daniel stood a few steps away, his face bright with pride and quiet relief. Near the edge of the group, Tonia stood frozen, guilt written all over her. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes swollen from crying. For a long moment, she couldn't move. Then, as if pulled by something greater than pride, she walked forward and sank to her knees before Amara. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice shaking. "I didn't understand. I thought I thought you were mocking us. Amara looked down at her, this girl who had once turned cruelty into power and felt no anger, only compassion. She reached out, lifted Tonia gently, and said, "Never mock what you don't understand. Every hidden thing has a reason." The words settled over the crowd like a prayer. One by one, heads bowed, and the murmuring stopped. In that silence, something invisible but profound passed between them, an understanding that some battles are not fought with fists or words, but with grace. From that day, everything changed. Students who once avoided Amara began to greet her with quiet respect. Lecturers spoke of her brilliance not as rumor but as fact. The same veil that had once caused laughter became a symbol of courage. Some said touching it before an exam brought good luck. Others simply said it reminded them that strength could wear any face. Amara herself didn't seek attention. She focused on her studies, on her new peace, on the small kindnesses that made life whole. She graduated top of her class, and on the day she collected her certificate, she carried the veil again, not over her face, but draped across her arm like a banner. When the cameras flashed and applause filled the air, she smiled, remembering her mother's words. The world fears what it cannot understand. Now she knew the other half of that truth. The world also learns from what it finally accepts. When the ceremony ended and the crowd scattered, Amara stood with Daniel beneath a tree near the gate. The evening sun dipped low, painting the sky gold. She looked at him and said, "Do you ever think about how everything started?" He nodded. "Every day. But I'm glad it brought me here." They laughed softly, the sound easy and warm. She took a deep breath, feeling the breeze on her uncovered face, and whispered, "I used to think my veil was protecting me from the world. Now I see it was preparing me for it." Daniel smiled. "And the world is better for seeing you." As they walked away, the camera of memory pulled back across the campus, across the city, across the fading horizon. The narrator's voice rose one last time. "Some curses are only shadows of fear. And when fear fades, light finds its way through even the darkest cloth." What did you get to learn from this story? Kindly drop your thoughts and questions below. Do well to hit the subscribe button to see more emotional and exciting stories like this on Afrotales by Siri.